Hello, everybody. Well, hold on a second. Hold on. Let me just adjust my mic. Oh, gosh, I haven't plugged this in yet. There we go. Hey, all right, now we go. Sorry about that. My microphone Bluetooth was not plugged in yet, so just I needed to just adjust that. Not that anybody's watching right now. There's not really going to be anybody here. Honestly, I don't know what I'm doing here when I'm when nobody's going to be talking to me. It's just, I think I just want to get my thoughts out there and maybe get others talking about them. I know I'm not very successful at the YouTube game, and that's probably one of the reasons why I've not been making a lot of videos because I know I'm not very good at this. I I'd like to say that I'm better at writing, but when it comes to making YouTube videos, it's just not something that I've dedicated a lot of time and effort towards. I'm just not good at this as a content creator. And that's a limitation on my end. But you guys, how are you doing? If you're watching this at a later point or if you come on soon, I'm hoping that we'll be able to really get people thinking about this. So I wanted to start by saying that if you're watching this at a later point, this is the July 4th. This is the day of American independence. About and it's just a huge deal in America. 250th anniversary of the country, and my thoughts on it were meh. So what? And maybe that's not the right attitude to have. You know, um, we are called to be, and by we I mean Christians, Catholics. We are called to be good patriots of the countries that we belong to. We are supposed to do everything we can for the benefit of the people who live in those countries. And we are supposed to pray for the people who live in these countries and for our leaders that they are able to make right decisions, that the people are able to have peace and prosperity. That is our duty as Catholics. And I'm going to be real here. America has been a very kind place for Catholics, especially in the past 100 or odd years. Yes, you could say that there has been discrimination and suspicion cast on Catholics, but there's a reason why when American Catholics look at old 19th century cartoons depicting bishops as crocodiles or showing the Pope going on like communicating behind the scenes, pulling the strings behind the president. We always laugh at that, and we laugh at that because those ideas are extremely outdated, especially in modern day America. Catholicism is now the largest Christian group in America. Um, Large numbers of very prominent people are Catholics. So America is, it's been very good for Catholics, at least compared to what we've seen historically. If you were a Catholic in the time of the 1600s, that was not a good time. You were not in for a good time. I'm going to say that. But the thing is, right? The reason why I am like not very enthused about America's 250th anniversary, the reason I feel melancholic really towards this country is not because of like animus, grudges over past discrimination. And frankly that's a ridiculous reason to be um opposed to a country, to say, oh, this country's people used to, like 100 years ago, say bad things about my people group. Well, yeah, well, that's how ungrateful is it that you are able to sit there and talk about it and have large audiences come around you and go nod their heads going, yeah, yeah, that's amazing, right? American founding fathers or freemasons, uh-huh, yeah. Ridiculous stuff like that. And and meanwhile you just benefit all of that, benefit from like so much that your ancestors would have given their right arm to have. No, I think the reason why I'm like this is, well, it's very simple, really. Um, Maybe I can use an analogy. I have a grandfather who is very ill. He's old. He's very old. He's rather ill. He's been in and out of the hospital several times the past couple months. And, he's getting to that age where at that point in his life, he's stopped caring anymore. It's not as though he's suicidal. He still wants to live and enjoy life. He's, when you visit him, he's actually a very happy person. But there's also a sense of melancholy in that, because I look at him and he just eats whatever he wants. He goes out, even though going outside like harms his lungs, he'll go outside, try to work the yard, and he end up in the hospital. And you're just thinking, well, why are you doing that, Grandpa? And he's like, oh, well, I thought I needed to do this because I didn't want to trouble you guys with going out in the yard. When it's clear that he liked going out in the yard and working the yard when he was younger, when he was healthier. That was what he'd like to do. And that kind of mentality where you know that you're coming at the end of your life, your twilight years, and you just want to live without worrying about preserving your life for another year. It's very difficult to look at that from the outside when you are a family member. It almost makes you want to disassociate emotionally, because it's easier than just watching it happen before your eyes. And on a certain point, it also frustrates you. It makes you angry. Why are you doing this to me? As if he can control the fact that he's dying. Like, this is we all are going to die someday. It's not as though he hasn't made good life choices. He's lived a very
long life. I'd say he's made very good life choices. If he was able to get that far, that's just the reality. But it's just the you feel that way, that frustration, that anger, because you know what's coming. You know you're going to lose that person, and he seems like he's not. He doesn't care almost. Like he's just trying to go on, enjoy himself while he's still here, and that breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. Gosh, and I look at you know um when you are the reason why Catholic ethicists say that um, people, Christians, should be patriotic towards their countries is because of you owe your country for your service and love for raising you, for providing for you, much like you would your family. That is why you should honor your mother and father. And that's one of the command. That's the fourth commandment. Honor your love mother and father, so that your life may be long on earth. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's pretty much what the Bible says. And patriotism is part of that. You owe America, if you're an American, you owe America for doing all the good things that it's done, right? And that that's what I see. Uh, what I see with America, I see America as like a family, the nation as a family, and your relationship with your family members doesn't have to be positive always. Like for some people, America is like a loving father or a kind mother. For other people, America is like that annoying liberal aunt who complains about Donald Trump whenever she sits down for Thanksgiving dinner. But for me, America is like my grandpa. America is in many ways dying. The it's at the very least it's sick, and there's not um, there's not an understanding of passing on gracefully within that. I think a lot of people are in denial about that, and rather than you know confronting it or trying to avoid the end or accepting it with grace and trying to leave behind something good for the children. Not that I say that this is happening with my actual grandpa, my living grandpa, because he's being very generous with his grandchildren and children. But when it comes to America, what I see is people are celebrating, making merry, having a good time, speaking very triumphantly, as if the problems that America faces right now just don't exist. And I can't live that lie. I can't live that lie. And so if you're like me and you're seeing what I'm seeing and can't you can't put that away and compartmentalize that feeling, I think the only option is disassociation, just apathy. You don't care anymore. I mean, if you if you feel like America has had a good run, then you don't care about going on for the next one. You don't then you don't care about like extending its life very You don't care about extending its life at all. You just are going here to enjoy it while it lasts, and then cross your fingers and hope that whatever comes next isn't going to be bad. And I'm under no illusions that whatever comes after America is not going to be as good as America. You know, and if you have any understanding of what's going to come after America, it's going to most definitely be the Zoran Mamdani style politics. It's going to be third worldist, immigrant directed politics. The Democratic Party has essentially become a political machine designed to bring money to certain communities in exchange for votes. And those communities generally are foreign born immigrant communities. Sometimes they're also inner city black communities, but increasingly they're foreign born. They're and they'll put on a socialist coat of paint. They'll say all of the quote unquote woke buzzwords, talking points about democratic workplaces and inclusivity and redistribution schemes to atone for past racisms. But at the end of the day, what it actually boils down to is giving people money in exchange for votes. That is the actual function. And it's not a new system. This democratic machine, I've been reading quite a bit about it. This democratic machine used to exist for inner city Catholic immigrants back in the day. It's one of the reasons why nativists were so negative towards Catholics. It's because these kinds of machine politics were a very common part of the American system. And I can't believe nobody is making those kinds of connections. Nobody is connecting the kind of machine politics we used to have back in the day before FDR pretty much nationalized that kind of machine politics to where the federal government now gives the state governments all the money, which in turn the state governments use to fund give to these communities. People aren't connecting the dots there, and I find that to be just something that says a lot about the current historical ignorance that we're having. Right? Nobody's connecting those dots. Nobody has commented on them. And the Zoran Mamdani style politics is going to ruin these inner cities, but that's just the symptom of the problem. The problem being the immigration of large numbers of people who have a mercenary attitude towards the United States of America, towards this country. And hello there. It's nice to have someone here. All right. I hope you stick around. This is going to be very interesting. At least I'm going to try to. So earlier today, I was scrolling my YouTube videos, and I came across one of many YouTube channels that I'm subscribed to. That's all about. There was this one. I'm subscribed to many different YouTube channels that are about books and education, especially English education, English literature education, because those are a very important part of the culture. Literature continues to be a major part of our culture and a part of our heritage. And there was this one young lady who runs a channel called Pens and Poison, and today made a excuse me she made a video called "Watch This If You Hate America," very and with a clickbait thumbnail. I can just actually, I think I can share my screen right here, and let's see. Yeah, just share my screen. Here we go. Yeah, so you should be able to see this, right? So she made this video titled "Watch This If You Hate America." Subscribe to this channel, by the way. It's actually not a bad channel. Recovering English major lit. So this young lady is the child of Jewish Russian immigrants who fled from her country. Who fled the fall of the Soviet Union. Um, and they came to America and they settled in what is basically what she describes as an ethnic ghetto type of community. And in Chicago, she grew up and she had an extremely she had this very deep animus towards America, and it was largely, in her words, it was largely due to the education system feeding her a steady diet of the usual narrative of, oh, America was a uniquely sexist, racist country that oppressed black people, that it oppressed immigrants, and all that good bad stuff. Something that you would see out of like a Howard Zinn book, right? A very kind of Marxian, new left view of America that simultaneously wants to castigate us for not living up to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, while also deconstructing American history and politics by saying that all in all of it was just a mask for self-interest, and nothing of it was noble at all. That kind of binary, that kind of like dichotomy is stuck within the head of a leftist, by the way. And it usually resolves itself by just having this hatred towards the country, which is what she had. And part of it was the education, but also it was just her not fitting in. She was Russian. She had parents who wanted to preserve the culture, and she was into literature, and she wasn't really into American television at all. And and she was also kind of what seems like a very nerdy kid generally. Like, she was into niche things like old Soviet cartoons. She was into reading Russian novels. How many young Americans read Russian novels? I'd imagine not very many. But then she learned from her parents her backstory, and she also got to go to college in a very prestigious university. And she was like, oh, yeah, actually, America is very nice because they welcomed my family and they did I got to do all these good things. And that's why you should like America, because America does nice things for immigrants. I just had I had this sinking feeling when I listened to that, because nowhere did she once say anything nice about the people living here. Now, maybe it's because she lived in Chicago and in like a bad part of town or whatnot. And then she went to a liberal university. And so maybe there was just nobody there who at all appealed to her sensibilities. Maybe none. But it just strikes me that there's this attitude towards America by these immigrants who come here, that America is only good because it gave them good things. And it gave, specifically, it gave them good stuff. They she was allowed to go to university. She was allowed to go to a simile, like get an education, and she had nice things here in America. Her parents lived in a small apartment that she was, and her dad was able to make it into an like a technology company. All these things, and I think on some level, I kind of do think that that's a nice thing. We should want to greet people who come to our country with generosity, with since with kindness. We shouldn't be cruel to immigrants who come here. But the thing is, there's a lot of people who have a very mercenary attitude towards America, and that just and who don't think about, like, they don't love America because of the people who live here. They don't love the culture or the traditions. They don't even like. I don't even. They don't even like what's on television or anything like that. Nothing superficial like that. It's purely because when I came to America, they gave me nice things. And so I'm going to stay in America because it continues giving me nice things. And those are the people who are not your friends. They're not part of the family. They're the hired help. When I said America is a family, America, your country is like a family, I mean it. And you can have immigrants who come over here and they adopt America as their home, and it is like an adoption. It is like adopting someone from a different background into your family. But that kind of thing, that kind of phenomenon is not present with a lot of these people. A lot of these people, it's like having the hired help. And yes, you might have like a kindly relationship with that person, and maybe one day they'll be like part of the family. But at the end of the day, they're only there to get paid. And if you were to stop paying them, they would not stick around. And that type of population, that type of person, is growing as a percentage of our countrymen. And we're just treating them like, oh, it's just immigrants. They're going to assimilate. They're going to integrate into our society. And people have this very strange understanding of assimilation too, where they think, oh, assimilation is basically you just learn to speak English and then you get a job that contributes, and then voila, you are assimilated. That doesn't really work though. Like being able to speak the language is the bare minimum. Being able to get a job to contribute is the bare minimum. When we talk about assimilation or integration, we really mean adoption. What we're talking about is adoption. We're talking about people who want to improve things here and help the people here because you love them, not just because they do nice things for you, although that's part of having a loving relationship. You don't want to just um, do good for your parents just because your parents do good things for you, as though if your parents stopped giving you allowance money, then you'd suddenly start hating them or turn against them. But that's exactly the kind of relationship these immigrants have towards our communities, towards our nation. Yeah, okay, not shocking that she has that view. When you have no heritage ties to a nation, you just view that nation in terms of material benefits. Well, but here's the thing. When I look at like tourist videos of, people coming from Europe who go to America, they will say all kinds of things about America that shock them, or that even impress them. They'll like there was this one French tourist to Texas who talked about how talked about how small talk was an art form in Texas. And in Texas, you don't when you're a native Texan like myself, you don't even think about things like that. But she noticed right away that Texans have a well-earned reputation for being kind even to strangers, and welcoming, even that they and maybe it's in part because she's like a very attractive woman, but no, she said, oh well, she goes to a coffee shop, and the regulars notice that she's not from around there, and so they ask her questions, and they start talking, and it was very interesting. And I'm just thinking about how that kind of appreciation is what you want to see from an immigrant population. You don't want to see, oh, well, I like Texas because when I came here, I got a free house and a good job and all this stuff and all these benefits. And that's what America is. Uh, that's what America is. America is all about like giving opportunities to people who look like me and come from my country. That's what America is all about, y'all. I'm just thinking to myself that what a shallow view. Would you have that as what it defines your relationship with your parents? Like, just think about that for a moment. What if you defined motherhood or fatherhood or parenthood as, oh well, my parents are just the people who gave me stuff. They gave me a home when I grew up, and they took and they had the and then they paid for my food and paid for my education and then sent me off, and I want to have that kind of relationship with my parent. Like, you you're missing something deeper. You're missing something deeper when you have that perspective. Because I said this before, it's a mercenary perspective. It's a hired help's perspective. It's not a family member's perspective. And if America is not your family, then you shouldn't be counted as a citizen. At least that's just in my view, right? You shouldn't count as a citizen if you're just here to reap the economic benefits of living in a first world nation. Uh, I do not even want to talk about air conditioning. I am very deeply ashamed of Americans who like go on about how Europeans don't have air conditioning or whatnot. I'm very deeply ashamed of them. And yeah, you could say, oh well, the you can say, oh well, well, those people are snobs and they don't have air conditioning and they're dying and this stuff. My view is Oh my God, people are dying from lack of air conditioning. Oh my God, goodness, that's terrible. Well, if the I'm sorry to say that I have a growing contempt for what America is now. It is an acid of culture, race, religion. If this is what America is now, then it deserves to die. Well, absolute defender, what I would say to you is the acid that you're talking about is not what America is. It's the disease that America is dying from. It's the disease that America is dying from. It is not the it is not the America. It's the essence of America itself. America is a nation, and nations are like family. And the thing is, right? You can. I talked about this earlier in the stream when I talked about my grandfather and how he's very sick right now, and it's easy to get angry and when you're watching him act like, oh, everything's just fine and dandy, and try to go about his daily life as though he nothing's wrong. It's also easy to become detached emotionally rather than try to grow close to somebody, because you see them dying and you're trying to mentally prepare for that. So I understand that, but I think contempt is the wrong feeling you should be having, right? Because that's not what contempt is, the wrong feeling you should be having, because um, you're basically trying to hate something that is dying or dead, something that is sick. You're blaming the person with the sickness for the sickness itself. Maybe you can say, "Oh, he should have done something about it. Why aren't our leaders doing anything about it?" And by all means, get mad at them. They are being very irresponsible. You should be angry towards the people in charge of our country for not taking care of it, for leading it down a bad path. But in truth, the acid of culture, race, and religion, that's a universal thing. It's more than just America that's been infected with this. And I think that uh, the best that we should do is try to survive that, build something that is better, something that can't be so easily whittled away. And it starts at your level of your relationships in your own life. It doesn't help that she's not part of our common haplogroup. See, that's a very interesting thing right there. Um, you know, it's almost like, the thing is, she came to America. The funny thing is, her parents had a more balanced view of America because they were comparing America to where they came from. Because as Russian Jews, um, when the Soviet Union was collapsing, they were blamed for the collapse of the Soviet Union. And now I don't imagine that there were some Russian Jews who might have tried to benefit in an immoral way from the collapse of the Soviet Union. But Joe Schmo, who owns the kosher cigarette store, is not responsible for the failure of communism. That just wasn't the case.
And so they came to America and they're like, oh my gosh, this is way better than being persecuted in communist hellhole that is the dying Soviet Union. But then she grows up and she doesn't really speak the language. She has a very snobbish attitude towards other Americans because while she's reading reading French, English, and Russian, she's learning three languages and reading Russian novels while she's still in like elementary school. Her kids are all talking about Pokemon and SpongeBob SquarePants. So there was a very strong cultural element there, right? And there's also the fact that her grandmother was involved and she was like, oh well, those dirty Americans, how dare they sit on the floor. This sitting on the floor is just so disgusting. Why don't they put on shoes while they're indoors. um it's very much a it's very much a cultural thing with her in that case. But I'm not denying that there isn't like there isn't an ethnic component to that, because obviously if you are part of like an ethnic group, ethnicities are basically little families, like, well, a family at a larger scale, but they're also little nations. And when you're part of that little nation with its own little community and its own little culture, the wider culture is something you have to interact with. And you can do all kinds of you can have all kinds of reactions to that wider culture. You can choose to try and integrate into it, accept America as your own, or you can have this kind of snobbish attitude where you view your fellow Americans as being lesser than you simply for not putting on shoes when you're inside or not reading Russian novels when they're in primary school. And for what it's worth, I think she's doing just fine on her YouTube channel, where she talks about the problems with the American education system and with especially higher education and its attitude towards English literature. She she wants to spread the love of literature to us, and let us have more immigrants like that who want to take what's good in their country and share it with Americans, rather than people who treat Americans with contempt for not having all the things that they had in their home country. But that's just my thought. Um, all right, yeah, uh, I think we're going to start winding down. This was not as much of a rant as I thought it would be. I thought it'd be angrier, but I think the more I thought about it, the more melancholic it made me. Maybe I can close the stream on a more positive note. Start talking about the things I do like about America, right? Oh, you're just coming on. You're getting to the end of the live stream, unfortunately. Yeah. Um. Well, maybe I can just start by saying that I I do enjoy quite a bit of the kinds of liberties that are found in America versus other parts of the world. And it's hard to put into words what I mean by this, because I'm actually very negative towards a lot of the founding documents. I don't have a very strong love of liberalism as like this abstract ideology. But what I do like is liberality, this kind of and that's a very different word from liberalism. It's basically a kind of openness. What liberality is basically this virtue where you're very generous with your money, time, and resources, as well as being broad, open to new ideas, creative. That is that kind of that kind of quality is very common in American history. And if you look at just how people from other countries viewed America throughout history, you could take a look at, for example, how Japanese ambassadors in the late 19th century, how they looked at America when they came here and they met the people. A lot of these foreigners who came to America had overwhelmingly very positive things to say. Yeah, they had some cultural shock moments, very humorously. The Japanese had this weird idea that America was a matriarchal society because the men would hold the doors open for women and act like gentlemen towards them. And they saw that and they're like, wait a second, I thought that women were supposed to be submissive. It's just not the case here. Oh no, that was kind of funny. But what you see in America that is that kind of liberality, this kind of openness to new ideas, dynamism, creativity, and just plain generosity. All of that is encompassed in the word liberality. So it's not liberalism that I like, it's liberality. It's this openness, kindness, generosity. Those things are very, very good traits that Americans have. And, I try to embody that in my everyday life whenever I can because of that virtue. Um, you had here, there's a comment here. I have a major question to ask about the United States. How can it be possible for Amerifriends and Euros to fraternize? I feel Americans want to be hostile and fall for propaganda. I hate it. I hate it too. To be fair, it's on both sides. There are a lot of people. A lot of it is on Twitter, and Twitter is a cesspool of hatred and outrage machines. And I think there's always going to be this kind of back and forth between Europeans and Americans, where they will clash on certain issues and and fight over dumb things like air conditioning. What a non-issue, air conditioning. Like, holy crap. Guys, just enjoy, if you're American, just enjoy air conditioning. It's not hard. You don't have to be a jerk about it online. And Europeans who are like, oh, well, there's blah, blah, Americans are fat and lazy and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, you have better food. You eat better than us. All right. I get it. But why don't you, instead of like arguing about it, why don't you just share recipes online, right? That might be much more beneficial for everybody. If you think that European food is so good, just in that Americans don't know how to cook and they're too fat and stuff and lazy and stuff, then like actually start making recipes online and share with your American friends. Oh, that's easy. It's because I lost access to my old Google account. Yeah, so I can't get onto that old Google account anymore. It's stupid. But that's the Google was being a jerk. I To make a long story short, my laptop and my old laptop and my old iPhone crashed around the same time, and so whenever I tried to get onto my old Google account with my new laptop, it kept sending messages to my old iPhone, which didn't work. So I had to eventually gave up and decided to get a new account. That's why. All right. And by the way, thank you for viewing this channel. It's very nice to have new people here. I don't get very many, so you can expect to be treated very well here. I try to be as generous as possible. And that's another thing I'd like to say that's positive about America. And that is a very positive outlook towards business and money making. You know, traditionally, the merchant class, the money making class, was seen as the lowest class. And it's not hard to see why. You know, if you have merchants, if you have corporations, if they're all about profit seeking, they're not going to put the good of the people first. And if that's the case, then you know that kind of money seeking materialism, that greed, is going to harm your country. And so you have to put strong restrictions on that. But of course, the merchants with all the money aren't going to want to give up whatever is helping them make money. And so naturally, this is going to lead to people using any means necessary to restrict money, restrict the monetary class. And one of the ways you do that is with a honor-based culture that prioritized spiritual and martial values over materialism, right? And you know, there's a lot to be said about those kinds of societies. There's a lot of you know, that kind of martial culture, that kind of you know, highly religious culture. There's a lot to be said about those societies and how they're run. But you know, America, when I look at its history, and even now you see this in certain areas, it presents a very different understanding of business and money making. One that I think is far more positive, a positive alternative to the greed is good, Gordon Gekko, Ayn Rand style of businesses. In America, first off, a lot of the wealthy capitalist class, they very much had an understanding of themselves that was very similar to the old European aristocrats and patrons, in that they saw their role as using their wealth to help their community and the people who had less than them. A sense of noblesse oblige. This is why you had so many great public works done by wealthy tycoons. You have so many you have public libraries funded by very rich donors. Even something as mundane as PBS, and yeah, PBS isn't very good, but the idea of the public broadcasting station is that it would be something for the people to help lift them, something educational on television that's good for them, and not just trying to sell them something. right? That was the idea behind it. And you know, you have that understanding of like what markets and businesses are supposed to be doing for a society is very good. And here's another thing, another positive aspect of American understanding of businesses is that we try to be nice to the people who serve us at these businesses. You try to give tips to the waiter. When someone comes and works at your house, you offer them, "Hey, do you guys want us to order a pizza or give you some water bottles while you work on our yard?" You know, that kind of thing. It surprises me, but there are a lot of other countries where this is not the case, where the people who work are treated with almost contempt. And why wouldn't they? They largely come from, again, honor-based cultures who see labor as being labor and making as being uh, lower class and therefore of unworthy of honor. But you know, the Christian understanding of work is that work is dignified. It's supposed to be dignified, and I think American culture very strongly reflects that. If there was one idea from America that I would want to spread to more parts of the world, it would be this understanding of business and work that is still around today in certain parts, but it's increasingly disappearing. You know, plans to make any new videos. Oh, funny you should say that. I'm actually in the process of creating a long video essay series on equality and why it's an important concept, and how do you reconcile equality with hierarchy. I think those are very important topics, because I think when people talk about hierarchy and equality, they don't appreciate always that there are many different um, interpretations of these concepts, many different meanings, and so people end up talking past each other when they have this dialogue. And I wanted to create those kinds of videos as a kind of response to some of the pagan or hard right YouTubers who try to say, "Oh, all forms of equality are bad." Of course, the fact that someone is smarter than you, that means there's no way that you can ever be equal at all, right? There, of course, the idea that people have different levels of intellectual ability and physical strength and moral character, and some of those attributes are somewhat influenced by genetics, inborn factors, but that doesn't really get to the heart of what people want when they say that all men are equal. What are they actually saying? Because obviously, if you have it, it honestly, if you have if you look at a document like the Declaration of Independence, and that says, "Oh, all men are created equal," what does that even mean? And by the way, they're getting that from a very Christian understanding of equality that was sort of distorted somewhat during the Enlightenment era, but it still has its roots in medieval Christendom. I like American gun culture. I wish I was able to live out that part of my life. Yeah, this is something I think that comes from a very frontier attitude, and I wish that the we did not have the racial issues that we do and the mental health issues that we did, because then I think more people would have a clearer understanding that gun culture is a good thing if we didn't have those issues in our society. Of course, back in the day, if you had to go back to like the 19th century, for example, the main problem with guns wasn't necessarily gun culture, it was rather duel culture, where people would settle their disputes by going and having a duel in the town square. And that was, as a Catholic, I am very much against the idea of using such duels to resolve disputes. But that kind of culture is still alive and well in a lot of ethnic communities in our country, most notably African American communities, and that that lives on in the kind of violent gang warfare that you see. It's all very much an honor-based culture, where if you do not adhere to certain things, if you don't respect their good name, if you insult them, the only response they have is, we're going to kill you, we're going to rough you up because you disrespected us. And that's a sign of a very much an honor culture that was that's very common, and that actually accounts for a large amount of the gun violence in America. Um, Gun violence that has a lot of people in other parts of the world, like Europe, scared. Uh, that and the mental illness. Mental illness is also a large factor. We do not treat the mentally ill in our country very well. That's another thing, and I think that's a symptom of the kind of acid that we're talking about here. KGB, I have not actually. I'll have to look him up. KGB defector. What was his name? Anatoly Golitsyn. I'm gonna have to look him up later. Okay. All right. Yeah. Gonna have to take a look at him. All right. So Virgin might is right versus Chad. Great Chain of Being. Well, the Great Chain of Being is something I unironically endorse. Right. There is a hierarchy in nature, and while humans have the thing I would need to emphasize here is that human beings share us the same link on that chain. They might have different parts in that chain link, but they all share the same chain link that goes up. Okay, yeah, it goes. You can find his books on Internet Archive. I'll have to look at that. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean that's another thing. I could go into a whole rant about how America does not treat the disabled and the mentally ill very well, and too much to the detriment of not just the mentally ill, but also to the people in their lives who have to deal with the crazy people. I don't know if you've ever watched an Asmongold stream, but he's like, he's constantly going on about how, mental, we don't put these people into asylums anymore. We could just lock them up and have them working to bang rocks with hammers and grow potatoes on potato farms.
in a typical Asmongold fashion, right? So, but and I don't particularly like Asmongold in his ideology, but on this point, I would agree. It's not kind to them, and it's not kind to the people around them to have to deal with this kind of thing. It's not just, and it's not just a matter of race, racial discrepancies, although yes, those exist, but it's also a matter of mental illness. It's also a matter of mental illness, and giving those people the kinds of help that they need, and not doing it because, oh well, I guess we watched footage from the 1970s about asylums. We have Americans have it in their mind that every asylum is Arkham Asylum from the Batman series, and now we have to have no more mental institutions. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, gee, why can't you just make the asylums better? You don't. If here's the thing, right? If you truly believe that these penal institutions like asylums, prisons, police, if those institutions are bad, your response shouldn't be, oh, we're just going to get rid of them and we don't have any replacement for them. And your response is, no, we're going to make these institutions better. But that's asking too much of ideologues, really. What else? So I like American liberality. I definitely like the gun culture. And I especially like the American attitude towards businesses, at least the older attitudes, right? Not the Gordon Greco greed is good mentality, but something more akin to like a businessman's version of noblesse oblige, combined with an understanding that businesses are supposed to help the community, workers are supposed to be treated well, and so on. That kind of thing. And I think that's actually a more positive vision of business and more useful socially than the old honor culture idea that the merchants are the lowest class and should be treated with contempt. What else? I would say that another thing I definitely like about America is the I definitely have an appreciation for American history. If you look at our history, there are a lot of very over the top figures, let's just say. And if you immerse yourself in American history, it can feel sometimes like those figures are just standing right beside you, hand on your shoulder, going, "Come on, man, you can do better." Right? Americans have a very paternal understanding of the towards the first generation who have founded the country. You can say that, for example, that's why we call them the founding fathers. When you say the founding fathers, we all know what you mean. We're talking about the Americans who started America as an independent nation and tried their best. And were they always perfect? No. If you look at these people, some of them had very flawed understandings of morality and they had wild personalities, but you can't help
but root for them almost, because they would make such amazing figures in a fictional story. And that's why there's this grand mythology surrounding the American founding. It's not something cynical. It's just that those people did something amazing in creating this nation that has endured for so long. And so that we idolize them as almost saint-like figures. Really, that's the best analogy I can give as a Catholic. Like, the founding fathers are almost like saints in the Church of America, you know, because of how much Americans value tradition. I feel like there are so many people who say, "Oh, the Americans don't have a history, they don't have a past." The hell we do. It's like you have the founding fathers of America, and to a lesser extent, there's the founding fathers of Texas, which I could get into a whole rant about the founding fathers of Texas and their problems. But I'm actually smiling when I think about their problems. And you know why? Because despite all of their flaws, despite all the things that they did that were not the best, they pulled off something amazing. They did something that was really good. And you can't help but admire them for that. You can't help but admire those people. And then you have other people that, and that's really what you should be looking at when you talk about Americans. You're talking about if you're truly an American, you've been adopted into the same family as as the founding generation, and you should be treating them like you're a descendant of that people group. And you should be respectful to people who have those ancestors. And if you aren't, then you're basically doing something gross. I think, like, you're basically not doing something very good for your ancestors. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that it's wrong to criticize them, especially even if the criticism is radical. Like, I see some Catholics online who talk about the ideologies of the founding fathers, their anti-Catholic views, or how the American Revolution was not a just war by Catholic standards, things like that. And all right, fine, right? I'm sure, because I'm sure that if you look, no matter whose family tree you're looking at, there's always going to be bad apples from the family tree. People who did less than moral things in your past. And this goes for anybody, no matter where you're from. Asia, Africa, Europe, the American continents, Australia. Doesn't matter where you're from, what people group you're part of. You're going to have bad people in your group. And some of them were related to you directly as a matter of bloodline, right? But you don't treat those people with contempt just because they might have done bad things in the past. You don't want to repeat those bad things, but you don't show contempt for those people either, because they are your family. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for them making good choices that they did. I think that just having this understanding that men of the past are going to be imperfect, and we can still love them anyway,
We can show respect to them despite their flaws. People don't want to have that view, and I think that's too much to their detriment. Um, what else? I definitely. I definitely do like the volunteer attitude towards America. Sorry, in American in culture. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely do love the spirit of volunteer work, helping others, uh, donating your time and effort to help others despite not being paid. I think that's a very wonderful thing to do. And I think it contributes a lot towards the wealth of the community, both materially and also spiritually. And it's just part of that liberality of America that I talked about earlier. It's just, you know, people, and this is what I hate about modern times. That kind of attitude is starting to get corrupted by cynical self-interest, right? But you can see this, even in that liberality, even in places you might not expect. Like, I think about, for example, Nick Shirley. And Nick Shirley, for all of his partisanship, he's just a guy. He's a guy with a camera and a vision, and he goes around and does investigative work, exposing fraud, and his work gets viral views on the internet, and now it's causing people in different state governments to start trying to change things in order to deal with the problems he points out in those videos. That is an essential part of the American experience, that liberality. Because this is another thing, really. Americans understand that you don't have to be part of some huge organization and acting as like a cog in a larger machine in order to affect change, right? Even if it's on a small scale, you can just as easily try and work things out by helping the people around you. I mean, Nick Shirley is an extreme example because he probably has a whole team of cameramen and social media people and small money donors helping him out. But he's ultimately trying to do that on the ground reporting without going to the credentialed journalists. And he's able to get stuff done because people with credentials have discredited themselves so vehemently. Okay, looking at him. Jefferson's religious views were flawed, but he had the right view on Constitution. It has not been updated every few years. It's made it not been updated every few years has made it a dead, empty document. Also, I like his proto-distributism economic views. Yeah, Jefferson was a very interesting interesting figure. I think it's kind of funny reading him, how schizophrenic he is on race sometimes, or like his weird Reddit tier atheist takes on the Bible are kind of cringe. But on the other hand, you can't doubt that he was in other respects very intelligent, and he's very much worthy of being called a founding father of America for those reasons.
Yeah, anyway, I'm going to start signing out here, but I'm hoping that everybody who watched this, you can play it back. I'm hoping that everybody can get some kind of enjoyment out of it. I know that my friend Creamsicle, he wanted to watch the stream, and I'm going to give a shout out to him. Hey, if you ever want to come on and talk with me, I'm on Discord. I'm on X. You can DM me on X. Usually, or whatnot. Just until then, I'm going to be ending the stream now. God bless all of you for all the great things that you've done. And God bless America, everyone. And I'm hoping that whatever happens in the future, I wish the best for the American people, including myself and my family. So I just ask that you pray for us. All right. Peace.